everyone, welcome to another Classic Movie Monday, and today I thought it would be interesting to briefly discuss a Tom Hanks film. Now, I did mention I think actually two previous Tom Hanks films that I did put in the classic category, Saving Private Ryan, as well as Forrest Gump. And this one is another one of my favorites of his, but it's not just a favorite just because of Tom Hanks, but I think the film as a whole stands out. The other performances are also really well done, and I think it's definitely worthy of recommendation and of the praise and of the sort of significance it's had over the years. And as you can see by the title, that film is Apollo 13. Yes, Apollo 13. Houston, we have a problem. Probably one of the more iconic lines of the film that people remember even to this day. Even people sometimes even use it in passing sometimes. But it is one of those films that dives into the area of space and of astronauts. And I think it is one of the films that stands out for being of good quality when it comes to executing a space astronaut survival film. Unlike Gravity, like I mentioned in one of my other videos, where I talked about how I felt that film was way overrated. So, without further ado, let me give you an understanding of Apollo 13, in case you don't know what it's about. Apollo 13 takes place, I believe, around the, I think still roughly the 1960s, if I'm not mistaken. I only say this because everybody is dressed in that kind of style. The earlier 1960s. But Apollo 13, in case some of you don't know, was actually an actual event that did, or an actual mission that took place. And this particular film takes it in the form of adapting it from the book that one of the astronauts wrote that is also a character within this film. His name is Jim Lovell, and it really tries to focus in on this space mission. So sort of the starting and build up to the space mission, the space mission itself, and then a little bit of the aftermath. So it really provides a good sort of three-act kind of structure by setting up the preparation, the launch, and the conclusion. So it really follows the traditional formats of a film. And by and large, the focus is on these three astronauts that ultimately go into space. And the Apollo 13 mission was designed for them to go to the moon. So I do want to make that clear. Now, the main character is the one that that they used his book for in order for this film, the astronaut named Jim Lovell that I mentioned, who is played by Tom Hanks. We have Jack Swigert, who is played by Kevin Bacon. Now, Kevin Bacon's character, Jack, was actually someone that was put in sort of at the last minute because the original astronaut that they wanted to use, I believe he got measles or some kind of sickness that made him incapable of ultimately completing the mission. So Jack is kind of the replacement, and you sort of see how he plays that sort of replacement role. And he's a really fun character as well. And Fred Haise is the third astronaut, who's played by Bill Paxton. So basically, it really focuses on those three. And also a little bit, too, of Tom Hanks's family, as well as the people sort of behind the ground works when it comes to executing these kinds of missions, because, you know, you have the control center where they're communicating with the astronauts through space, and I believe um, that's where we actually really get the famous line from Houston, we have a problem, is from the communication to that control center. But it really highlights well, I think, what the Apollo 13 mission was like and how much weight there was on this particular mission. Now, I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form it is as accurate to the actual mission that took place, but I think as far as the movie adaptation is concerned, even though it takes probably a certain amount of liberties, it still holds, I think, true to the ideas and concepts that sort of surrounded the whole mission itself and the sort of struggles and the stress behind the mission, because you'll ultimately see how things go wrong as the mission is going on and they're traveling through space. So you really do feel the interactions with these characters, though, because these characters really do feel like they have a certain amount of personality and that they play a certain role when it comes to the understanding uh, of the ship. Like, they know their role within the ship and they know what their place is within the ship, and they sort of try to work together in order to ultimately try to overcome the various obstacles that are put into their way once things ultimately end up going wrong, which you will see. And I think it does a really good job of tying in what's going on in space with what's going on the ground and how they're feeling the stress and um, the trying to analyze the problems, as well as the stress within space, where all they're thinking of is this it? Am I going to be able to make it home? So you really do see that connection tied in really, really well and blend together really well. And that's why I think this film really works as a kind of disaster survival film, because it brings in a certain amount of weight by giving the characters characteristics and a place within this mission that they're on, but also giving sort of a in-depth perspective of what it was like working on the ground and trying to make sure that this spaceship ultimately comes back to NASA. So that's really really at the heart of the film. It's a very human film. It conveys sort of that human spirit of, no matter what happens, you just keep pressing forward and you always find a solution. There's never giving up. There's always some way around whatever circumstance, and I think it pushes these ideas out really well. And as a result, I think we get a very strong film. And I like too that it gives you a wide range of perspective. You see, you really do feel like Tom Hanks has a connection with his family, because they do really establish that in the beginning of the film. It's not like in Gravity where you don't really see the interaction between Sandra Bullock and ultimately the daughter that she likes talking about so much. So again, it does good of acting out a sense of development, and you feel the weight in how all of these characters are connected to one another. And I think this film did a really good job of executing that, because we see the spacemen interacting with the people on the ground before they go on the mission. You see Tom Hanks and his family interacting with one another. You do see sort of the family interacting with the people who are on the ground as the spaceship is going on. So you do have these moments where you do feel like there is this sense of everybody is trying to ultimately accomplish the same thing, which is to get the spacemen or astronauts, excuse me, home safely. And that's why I think this film stands out. It does a good job with character, it does a good job with storytelling, and you do feel the sense of weight that the of the conflicts that end up arising as a result um, of those connections that the characters have, and ultimately of how the plot is structured. So, I think that's really all I can say about this film without giving too much away, because I really don't want to give away the conflicts and what ends up happening, because I think that's more for the viewer to view. But I think it's definitely worthy of a recommendation if you have not seen it. Watched it in college. It was awesome when I watched it then, and it's awesome when I watch it again. So yeah, definitely worth, I think, some viewings. Um, but I think that's really ultimately all I can say about the film. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.